All right, ladies and gentlemen, the Democrat convention. I'm watching all the reportage on it, including the enemy channels, where they're literally slobbing all over each other. They need to wear bibs. The spittle is so constant, flowing like a river out of their orifices. They're so excited. Ladies and gentlemen, Kamala Harris is already their nominee by default. She was their nominee 10 days ago. They did it virtually. There was no convention when they nominated her. She hasn't received a single vote, not one, for the nomination for President of the United States. Yet this party is going to install her, has installed her, and now is having a big party that they installed her as their nominee. After the convention, you'll have a choice between voting for somebody, Donald Trump, who actually received votes from American citizens and won the nomination fair and square, and Kamala Harris, who never received a single vote from a single American citizen for president at any time. Now, this is fundamental because you have a conga line of buffoons, grifters, political hacks, Marxists who are millionaires who preach poverty. You've had the Obamas, they were on in the phony duet, and they're not alone. You have a Democrat Party that is the most fascistic party this nation has ever seen in terms of its operation. In terms of its operation. And you know what? Many people are perfectly fine with it. So this is not a nominating convention. She's been nominated. They changed their rules. They brushed off Biden, who's somewhere in California now, shuffling around. Probably have a leash on him to make sure he doesn't get too far, you know. That's what they did. This whole thing is a farce. This whole thing is phony. It's like a fiction. It's some kind of a movie. Obama gets up there, the Mr. Obama, claims, he's the best friend and everything, stabbed him in the back 1,000 times. Didn't want him as the nominee the first time, helped broom him the second time. And the Obamas hate Dr. Jill. Not a word about Dr. Jill. They hate Dr. Jill. And yet you're supposed to believe it's all pretty copacetic. They have up there Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, a Marxist Islamist. He's not even a member of the Democrat Party. He's a member of the Democrat Socialist Party. That's okay. It's a big tent there. Leninists, Trotskyites, Maoists, Stalinists, whatever. That's their tent. Joe Biden droned on for hours. Not once did he mention the word Israel. In fact, Barack and Michelle never mentioned the word Israel. In fact, Hillary Clinton never mentioned the word Israel. Why is that? They used to, decades ago, but not anymore. We know why that is. We know exactly why that is. And, of course, they'll have Josh Shapiro, as Michael Rappaport said, who's tried to un-Jew himself, and now they'll put him up there, and he'll be screaming at the top of his lungs. They'll present him as an example of why they're not anti-Semites. You know, he's a useful idiot. And there's the husband, whose law firm represented the PLO, as I understand it. Another useful idiot. But we know the policy. She's meeting in secret with Islamists who talk about the destruction of Israel, talk about cutting Israel off while it's surrounded. Oh, yes. All this stuff on TV and radio, this whole convention, is not about your reality. It's not about what you face, what you confront. Harris supports the destruction of women's sports. She can talk about abortion all she wants. And it is problematic, I think, that when we have conservatives on radio and TV, they don't talk about this enough. Women's rights is about more than abortion. Women's sports has been fought for half a century. The 1972 Education Act that amended the Civil Rights Act was to ensure that women were treated like women and that they had equal access to sports and funding for sports. And so Biden sought to destroy it. The Supreme Court just ruled 5-4 no. 5-4 with Gorsuch, who's very, very strange on this issue. Very strange. I assume a member of his family might be affected. He always throws in with the radical left on this issue and solely this issue. But 5-4. Kamala Harris does not support women's sports. She's destroying women's sports. Kamala Harris does not support a mother's right to make decisions about her child. Whether it's what kind of books they read in government schools, what they're taught about sex in government schools, about indoctrination on CRT in government schools. And she picked somebody, a governor, the most radical governor in this country, Tampon Tim, who doesn't believe parents should have the final say on whether their children should be sexually mutilated, either by surgery or medicine or not, if the state decides otherwise. Does that sound like somebody who supports women's rights? Kamala Harris supported the appointment of Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court, who won't even define what a woman is. Does that sound like somebody who supports women's rights? We allow the Democrats and their party to say they support women, but they don't support women. You know what else they support? The draft, which is to include girls, women. Women in the draft. They support that too. Is that supporting women's rights? They're weak on crime. They're weak on crime. Well, in the rape statistics, overwhelmingly, who is it that gets raped and by whom? Women by men. Girls by boys. So when you're weak on crime, when you're busy contributing to organizations that provide bail to criminals, when you support Soros prosecutors, as she was a Soros prosecutor before there was a Soros prosecutor, when you're weak on crime, when you appoint activist judges, how is it that you can be for women's rights? She's not for women's rights. She's a Marxist Islamist. She backs Hamas against Israel. She uses Hamas's statistics. If she cuts off Israel, Hamas wins. Hezbollah wins. The Houthis win. Iran wins. The Islamists win. How do they treat women? How does Iran treat women? What does Iran do to girls that don't cover their heads with scarves? They torture, rape, and murder them. So how is it that Kamala Harris stands for women's rights or the rights of young girls? Open borders. We have the worst slavery situation in our country since the end of the Civil War. Women, girls, little boys, mostly of color, sold into sex slavery, sold into pornography. Open borders. The border czar who pretends not to be the border czar. But she is vice president of the United States. She can speak up. She can influence policy. And she has. She supports open borders. She opposes the Border Patrol. She opposes ICE. And the consequence? Women sold into slavery like never before. And children sold into slavery like never before. Labor slavery and sex slavery. Mostly people of color. Is she for women's rights? No, she's not. She uses women as she uses everyone else. That's what Marxists do. That's what they do. Price controls will destroy every supermarket, every grocery store in this country. The shelves will be empty. The prices will be through the roof. Is that women's rights? I'm just curious. Driving up the price of fuel with a war on fossil fuels, wanting to effectively nationalize our oil companies. Is that women's rights? That women have to pay more for gasoline? What about single women? Now, I have to confess, when it comes to abortion, nobody has a more radical position than Kamala Harris. Abortion right up to the last minute. Well, that even doesn't sound like women's rights. What do you mean, Mark? I assume that includes aborting little girls. That's right, aborting little girls. Have you ever seen a documentary of how you abort a baby in the last trimester? How about in the last week before birth? How about right before birth? Have you ever seen one? No, you haven't. Do you know how gruesome that is? What is it that you're actually removing? Killing and then removing. Use your mind's eye. Use your imagination. A brand new baby that is removed from the womb, dead. It is killed in the womb. The difference of centimeters. Can we at least agree that that is monstrous? Can we at least agree that it is Hitlerian? Can we at least agree on that point? Can we at least start from the birth and move our way back? Can we at least agree on that? Well, Kamala doesn't believe a mother or parents should be involved in the decision-making. How do you know, Mark? Because she appointed as her running mate Tampon Tim. And he believes abortion at any level, at any time, without parental notification. You watch this Democrat convention. It's a clown show. Everybody's excited. Everybody's joyous. This is pathetic. This is grotesque. This is a party that is cheering somebody as a candidate for president who never received a single vote, who had a coup against the individual who did get a single vote. This is a party that doesn't believe in the American system, doesn't believe in the electoral system. This is a party that will use race, that will use sex, that will use class warfare, that will use anything it has to for power. For power.